"Don't tell me what to do, girl." That's what Cardi B said. Right before she stepped closer, spat near Emani Ellis's foot, and swung her hand like no one was watching. She thought no one would believe a black security guard. And for a while, no one did. Until the footage surfaced. They never said Emani's name. Not in the first tweets. Not in the tabloids. Not when TMZ ran it like gossip. Not when millions clicked. She was just the black woman at the clinic. Just a guard. Just angry. Just invisible. And across from her, they said only one name. Cardi B. Superstar. Pregnant. Powerful. A woman the world already loved. But here's the thing. Justice doesn't care who gets more likes. It cares who got spit on. Who was called you people. Who was told, straight to her face, "You ain't shit." It started on a Tuesday. The air in Beverly Hills was clean. Too clean. Like everything had been scrubbed before the day began. At Beverly Women's Clinic, Emani stood in uniform. Black, proud, professional. She didn't expect trouble. Not from a celebrity, not at her post. Cardi walked in, laughing, phone up, streaming. She filmed the front desk, the art on the walls. Her own face, radiant under the clinic lights. Emani stepped forward, calm. "Ma'am, this is a protected health space. No filming allowed." Cardi didn't lower the phone. "Not yet. Who even are you?" "Security always got an attitude? You girls always pressed about something." The smile never left her face, but the poison was in the tone. Emani repeated herself. Respectful. Clear. "Please stop recording, ma'am." Cardi moved closer, smirked. "You people always hiding behind rules. But rules don't make you important. You're not the law, you're just background." She said it soft. Soft like a knife being pulled from cloth. Then the moment came. Spit hit the floor. A hand raised, nails slicing air, brushed past Emani's cheek. Just enough to sting. Emani did what professionals do. She filed a report. Quiet, calm, by the book. 3 days later, she was suspended. The clinic issued a neutral statement. "We respect all parties involved." But the video they shared? 5 seconds. No sound, just a black woman saying something and Cardi walking past. That was enough for the world to decide who the villain was. They said Emani was overreacting, chasing fame, trying to take down a queen. But they missed the real story. Someone else had been recording. A hallway feed. A backup. Something no one knew still existed. Except for one tech who didn't follow deletion protocol. And one night, that video made its way to Emani's inbox. The subject line read, "They left this out." They called her JustAGuard, but they forgot. It's always the quiet ones who carry the truth. If you stood where Emani Ellis stood, would anyone believe you? Beverly Women's Clinic didn't look like a place where stories begin. It looked like a secret. A glass building, too clean to question, tucked between luxury skincare offices and quiet plastic surgeons. A place where fame came in through the back door, and nobody asked why. Where privacy was sold like perfume. Wrapped, scented, and expensive. To most people, it was just a clinic. To Emani Ellis, it was a battlefield with white walls and soft lighting. She'd worked there for nearly 2 years. No incidents. No infractions. Not a single complaint. She showed up early, stayed late, memorized the emergency procedures, wore her badge like armor even when patients looked through her like she wasn't there. She wasn't just a black security guard. She was invisible until she wasn't. That morning had started quiet. The air smelled like lemon disinfectant and secrets. Emani stood at the front checkpoint, beside the orchid someone kept replacing weekly. Her boots were shined, her shirt pressed, her expression unreadable, until the laughter arrived. Cardi B, in designer shades and a silk maternity coat, swept in through the front doors like she owned the floor. A nurse tried to greet her. She waved it off with a smile and pulled out her phone. "Y'all, I'm in here," she said to the camera. "This bougie-ass place, they better have snacks." She was live streaming. It wasn't the first time Emani had seen celebrities do it, but usually they stopped when asked. Usually they listened. She stepped forward, voice low, hands visible. "Ma'am, this is a private medical facility. Filming isn't allowed in patient areas." Cardi looked at her for a moment, paused, tilted her head. "Why y'all always like this?" she said, still smiling. "Security be mad every time I breathe?" The phone didn't come down, not yet. Behind her, 2 assistants said nothing. One adjusted Cardi's bag. The other scrolled on her phone. No one saw Emani, not really. This wasn't the first time Emani had been spoken to like that. Not the first time someone said, "y'all," with a tone that meant you people. Not the first time a famous client thought the rules didn't apply to them, or that black staff were just there to take the heat, not enforce the law. But she stood firm. She'd stood firm before, in Afghanistan, as a logistics coordinator. At her last job, where a drunk executive once tried to grab her wrist and ask who trained girls like her, she didn't flinch. "Please stop filming, ma'am," she said again. Cardi looked at her over the rim of her sunglasses. "This security girl got an attitude, huh? You mad 'cause I'm famous?" The front desk nurse heard it. So did the receptionist. But no one said anything. That was how it worked at places like this. People with power didn't have to yell to make you feel small. They could whisper it, smile while they say it. And everyone else would stay quiet, not because they agreed, but because they were afraid to interrupt the hierarchy. The hierarchy was silent, but it screamed indecisions. Why did no one stop the filming? Why was the only person enforcing rules also the only one suspended later? Why were all 3 other staff white? Why was Emani the problem? She didn't answer those questions then. She just went back to her post, wrote the incident down, filed it through the clinic's internal system. She didn't expect a parade. She didn't expect thanks. But she also didn't expect to be punished. 3 days later, she received a formal notice. "Your employment has been temporarily suspended pending investigation." The reason? Guest discomfort, unprofessional tone, no mention of spit, no mention of slurs, no mention of the way Cardi had looked at her like she didn't belong in the room. The clinic didn't say she was wrong. They just said she was too much, too assertive, too visible, too black. And when the video leaked, the edited, muted, no audio, no contact version, the media called her aggressive, a low-level staffer, a possible clout chaser. She watched her own story get rewritten, and the world hit play. There's a difference between insult and assault, between tone and threat, between being dismissed and being degraded. But in that moment, for Emani Ellis, all of it happened at once. Cardi B's voice got louder, not screaming, just confident, not cruel, just careless. "Don't step to me, girl. I don't know who you think you are, but you not it. Don't be mad just 'cause I'm the one on the damn cover." The receptionist looked up, froze. The nurse behind the glass held her breath. One assistant nervously tugged on her sleeve. But no one said anything, because Cardi B was the gravity in that room. Everything revolved around her, even truth. Emani didn't move, didn't flinch. "Please step back, ma'am." But that's when it happened. Cardi took one long step forward. The heel of her boot struck the tile with a sharp crack. She leaned close, too close, and let a stream of spit land near Emani's boot. Then she smiled and raised her hand. Fingers long, nails filed to perfection. They came down in a motion that was meant to intimidate, maybe not to hurt. But one edge caught Emani's cheek. Just enough to scratch, just enough to sting, just enough to be called contact. Time paused. Emani blinked, and Cardi turned away like nothing happened. Like she hadn't said what she said, hadn't moved the way she moved, hadn't spat, hadn't scratched, hadn't shattered the line between rule and violation. "Let me go sit down before I catch a charge," Cardi muttered to her assistant. And the room laughed. This is how power behaves when it knows it's protected. Emani walked to the security office. Alone. She didn't cry, didn't shake. She opened the internal reporting portal and filled out every field. Verbal harassment. Possible assault. Physical intimidation. She marked the exact time, the camera number, the location. She checked the box for follow-up required, and she waited. The next morning, her supervisor called. "We're placing you on temporary leave," he said. "There's a concern that your interaction with a high-profile guest may have violated tone expectations." Tone expectations, not physical boundaries, not safety standards, tone. Emani didn't go home. She went to urgent care. The doctor took a photo of the scratch, asked how it happened. She told the truth. The report read, "Minor abrasion, non-infectious, consistent with fingernail contact." It didn't matter, because the media had already chosen their headline. Cardi B harassed at clinic by aggressive security guard. The leaked clip showed none of what Emani experienced, just a silent video. She stepped forward. Cardi flinched. No sound, no context, no words like "girl" or "you people" or "you ain't shit." The clip went viral. Millions of views in hours. People laughed at her posture, mocked her haircut, called her bitter, angry. Another black woman trying to get a check. She opened her DMs. "Security girl mad she got no career. You got scratched? So what? Go cry to HR. Y'all always reaching." But the worst one read, "Just say you hate famous women and go." No one asked if Cardi really did it. They just assumed she didn't. Because fame, to some, is its own innocence. And being a black woman in uniform is its own conviction. Emani stopped checking the headlines. She started sleeping on her couch, stopped responding to old co-workers, kept the lights off longer than usual, spoke less to her mom, because the moment wasn't over. It was looping, every day, every time someone sent a laughing emoji under her face. But then, she got a text from a number she didn't recognize. "They didn't delete all the files. You should see this." Attached, a Dropbox link to a folder titled Backup Tech Server, Hallway, 3B. "Move." She clicked, and this time, she heard it. The voice, the spit, the scratch, the laughter, the truth. The worst part wasn't the scratch. It wasn't the spit. It wasn't even the suspension. It was the silence that followed. The kind that sounds like agreement. The kind that feels like permission. For them to win, and for you to disappear. Emani Ellis had never been afraid of being alone. But she had never felt erased before. At first, she thought maybe someone from the clinic would reach out. A receptionist, a nurse, the supervisor who used to greet her in the mornings. But the texts stopped. The emails were dry. The security team WhatsApp thread removed her by Thursday. Even her mother noticed. "You sound different, baby." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. I can hear it in your breathing." But how do you explain that kind of ache? How do you explain what it feels like to be publicly mocked for simply existing at your post? How do you tell your mother that a woman who spits near your foot still has more credibility than you? Emani stayed inside. Deleted the Twitter app. Kept her head down at the grocery store, where two teenage girls whispered near the checkout line, "That's the security chick from the Cardi thing, right? She's the one who said she got assaulted." Whatever. Clout chasing. She started seeing it everywhere. People laughing, shrugging. Celebrities reposting the clip with crying emojis. YouTubers reacting to it like it was a sketch. No one showing what really happened. No one playing the audio. No one playing her side. And then came the memes. "Don't talk to me, girl," in glitter font. A screenshot of Cardi smiling with the caption, "Security Girl, Emotional Damage Speedrun." Reaction videos ranking top 5 celebrity clapbacks, Cardi B edition. Emani wasn't a person anymore. She was content, but there was one moment that broke her. A clip she didn't expect. Not of Cardi. Of her. Walking out of the clinic that day, head down, holding a file. Someone had recorded her from behind the bushes. The caption read, "When your villain origin story gets canceled." 85,000 likes. She stared at the screen. Not angry, not even sad. Just numb. She closed the app. Turned off the phone. Stared at the ceiling. And that's when the thought came. The one she hadn't allowed before. What if I let it go? What if I don't say anything else? They'll forget me faster if I stay quiet. Maybe silence is safer than justice. She didn't sleep that night. She didn't eat the next day. She sat in her living room, watching the sun shift on her floor tiles, thinking about how many people never speak up. How many black women in uniform get spat on, pushed aside, talked down to, and never say a word. Not because they're weak, but because they know what happens when they do. Because they know the system isn't built to believe them. And yet, Emani had something most don't. A clip, a file, a time-stamped, recorded, unedited, high-resolution truth. She opened her laptop, watched the hallway feed again. At 00:03:17, the moment Cardi's hand moved. At 00:03:18, the audio caught the words, "You people always got something to cry about." No edits, no filters, just raw proof. "I'm not doing this for revenge," she whispered. "I'm doing it because I remember what it felt like to be 8 years old and watch my mom cry when a patient called her the colored nurse. And no one stood up for her. Now I'm grown, and it's my turn." Emani closed the file. She picked up her phone. And finally, for the first time in weeks, she dialed the number of someone who used to stand in courtrooms, not kitchens. Her mother. "Mama? Yeah, baby? I'm gonna need you to dust off that old law degree." It wasn't just about Cardi B. It wasn't even just about what happened in that hallway. This was older, heavier. Because Emani Ellis had seen this before. Not in videos, not on timelines, but in her own living room, when she was just 8 years old. It was a Thursday afternoon. Emani had gotten out of school early. She ran to the kitchen with a paper full of red stars, excited to show her mom. But her mother wasn't smiling that day. Marissa Ellis, sharp-minded, iron-spined, once a civil rights law student, was sitting at the table. Her hand clenched around a folded letter, her eyes glossy, her mouth tight. "Mama, just give me a second, baby." On the counter was her uniform, hospital navy blue, with her name tag still pinned, Marissa, RN. Emani climbed onto the stool beside her, waiting for the usual. Praise, warmth, questions about her school day. Instead, her mother took a deep breath and whispered, "A patient today told me I looked like one of the good ones. Then said I should smile more because it makes black women less threatening." She didn't say it angrily. She said it the way you say things you're tired of hearing. Like a bruise that never fully healed. Like a memory that never got to become history. "Did you tell your boss?" Emani asked. "Doesn't matter," her mom replied. "They'll say he didn't mean it like that. They always do." "But that's not fair." "No, baby, it's not." Emani never forgot that day. Not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't done. Her mother didn't file a complaint, didn't make noise, didn't stir the system. She just folded the letter, put it in a drawer, went back to work the next day. And now, decades later, Emani understood why. Because silence doesn't feel like surrender when you've already lost too many battles. It feels like survival. But Emani had a chance her mother never did. She had proof, she had video. She had a generation that knew how to make noise. So when she called her mother that night, she wasn't looking for comfort. She was asking for fire. "You want me to be your lawyer? I want you to be the woman you taught me to be. The one who knows silence can kill. You know I haven't practiced in years, baby. Then it's time to practice justice. Marissa didn't say yes right away, but she didn't say no. And the next morning, when Emani came downstairs, her mom was already dressed. In her old gray blazer, notebook in hand, no makeup, no filter. Let's remind them who raised you. What followed wasn't some courtroom montage. It was messy, exhausting, re-traumatizing. Emani had to relive every word, every frame. Marissa had to sit across from lawyers who once quoted her lectures in law school and now tried to discredit her daughter. But somewhere between the legal filings and deposition prep, something shifted. The story was no longer just about Cardi B versus Emani Ellis. It was about how many women had walked away from fights they never should have had to endure. Marissa said it best during the first prep session. What they did wasn't just spit. It wasn't just words. It was the system asking, "Are you going to stay in your place?" And we're answering, "Not today." But even with the truth in their hands, they knew the battle wasn't over. Cardi's legal team was brutal. Their PR arm was relentless. They painted Emani as unstable, angry, unprofessional. They dug up her old tweets from college, questioned her motives, twisted her silence into guilt. But what they couldn't erase was the clip. What they couldn't edit was the scratch. What they couldn't deny was that Emani Ellis had once stayed quiet. But this time, she brought a witness, and her name was Marissa. This wasn't about money. Not for Emani. If it was, she wouldn't have waited this long, wouldn't have endured the silence, the suspension, the headlines, wouldn't have cried in her kitchen with the lights off and her badge still hanging on the doorknob. She wasn't suing because she was bitter. She was suing because if she didn't, this would happen again. To someone else? To someone quieter? To someone without a mother like Marissa. So they got to work. Not with cameras, not with interviews, not with hashtags, but with documents, with timestamps, with timelines and law books and late-night coffee. Marissa laid out a legal strategy like it was a map of war. Civil suit, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligence, wrongful termination, racial bias under hostile workplace conditions. She pulled up old settlements, found a past NDA connected to Cardi's team, sealed but suspicious, tracked statements from former security staff. Every name became a thread. Emani handled the rest. Statements, medical records, her HR file, the scratch photos, the internal complaint, the video. Especially the video. They didn't send it to the media. They didn't post it online. They waited. Because when truth hits too early, people scroll past it. But when it hits at the right moment, it detonates. Meanwhile, Cardi's team went into full defense mode. They hired a crisis PR firm, released a statement calling the allegations false and emotionally exaggerated. Cardi herself went quiet, at least in public. But in leaked audio from a rehearsal, she was heard saying, "She lucky I ain't pressed charges on her. These security girls get bold." It circulated. Quietly. And that quiet was loud enough for people to start whispering. Emani kept her head down, didn't do interviews, didn't respond to trolls. But she noticed something. The silence was shifting. A few women she didn't know messaged her on LinkedIn. "I worked with her. You're not lying. Thank you for saying what so many of us couldn't. I was a nurse at that clinic in 2016. That hallway was always muted on purpose." When the court date was announced, Twitter lit up again. CardiBTrial. Justice for Ellis, JustAGuard. Some still mocked, but others were watching closely this time. The night before the hearing, Emani sat on her porch. She hadn't said much to Marissa that evening. They had reviewed everything. The evidence was airtight. But that didn't mean it would work, because truth isn't always louder than fame. And justice isn't always enough to overcome influence. Marissa sat beside her, sipping tea. You know you don't have to do this alone, she said. I'm not. Even if I wasn't here, I'd still go in tomorrow. Marissa nodded. Good, because they expect us to break before the doors even open. That night, Emani slept for the first time in a week. No nightmares, no doubts. The morning was cold, but the hallway outside the courtroom was warm, with people, strangers, women in uniforms, nurses, guards, EMTs, janitors. No signs, no chants, just presence. People who knew what it was like to be called just a staff member. To be treated like silence was their job. Marissa placed a hand on Emani's shoulder. You ready? Does it matter? No, but it feels good to say it. They walked through the doors, and across the aisle, Cardi B was already seated. Hair styled, gold hoops, perfect posture. She didn't look up, but her lawyer did, and when his eyes met Marissa's, he blinked. Just once, because this wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. It was a reckoning. The courtroom wasn't quiet. It was calculating. The air didn't hum. It ticked. Every cough felt like commentary. Every pen tap felt like a warning. This wasn't a place for truth. This was a place for precision. And Cardi B's lawyer was surgical. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. He called Emani Ellis to the stand with a smile. Asked her to spell her name slowly, like she might forget. Asked where she'd gone to college, what degree she held, what training she had in de-escalation. Asked how long she'd worked at the clinic, and then without blinking, have you ever had difficulty regulating your emotional responses in high-pressure situations? Marissa flinched in her seat. Emani didn't. No, she said clearly. He nodded, took a breath, flipped a page. You filed a complaint stating Ms. Belcalis Almanzar, known professionally as Cardi B, spat near you and scratched you with her nails. Yes. Yet you didn't go to the police. I followed internal protocol first, which resulted in your suspension, correct? Yes. So your complaint led to you being punished. It led to me being silenced. That turned heads. Even Cardi looked up for a second. The lawyer narrowed his eyes. Ms. Ellis, would you say you were offended by her words? I was degraded. That's not the same. Were you physically hurt? It didn't bleed, but it bruised. Did anyone else in the room see the spit? Not from where they were standing. So no one else can confirm your version of events? Emani paused, then spoke, slow, deliberate. They couldn't see it, but the hallway camera did. The room shifted. The judge looked over his glasses. Cardi's team sat forward. You're saying there's surveillance footage? Yes. That hasn't been shown? Not yet. For the first time since the trial started, the silence was not on her. It was on them. Marissa stood. Your Honor, we would like to submit previously unreleased footage from Hallway 3B, time-stamped and extracted from the clinic's backup servers, chain of custody verified. The judge raised an eyebrow, nodded. Proceed. The lights dimmed, the screen glowed. And then, there it was. Cardi, in full color. Emani, clear as day. At 0:03:16, Cardi steps forward. At 0:03:17, a flash of her hand. At 0:03:18, the scratch. And at 0:03:19, her voice caught on mic. You people always act like victims. You ain't got power like that. A ripple moved through the room. Not gasps. Just breath. That collective, invisible shift when people can no longer deny what they just saw. Cardi's lawyer stood. Objection. Out of context, this could be misinterpreted. The judge didn't even blink. Noted, but admissible. The clip ended. The lights came back. No one looked at Cardi, except Emani. She looked straight at her. Not with anger, not with pride, but with clarity. The kind you get when you've been ignored so long. You've memorized what silence sounds like. And now silence had a sound. It sounded like truth. The courtroom didn't erupt. There was no shouting, no gasps, no slamming fists. Just stillness. The kind that settles after a storm. Not because the damage is over, but because it's finally been seen. Cardi B didn't speak. Not at first. She sat upright, lips pressed together, jaw clenched just enough to show she wasn't okay, but not enough to let anyone say it aloud. Her team whispered, typed, shuffled papers, but the image on that screen, her words, her tone, her movement, hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Emani Ellis sat like she had on the day it all began. Straight, quiet, present, except this time she wasn't invisible. She was undeniable. The judge gave instructions to the jury. They filed out. The room stayed heavy. An hour passed. Then 2. Then the verdict. In the matter of Ellis versus Almanzar, we find in favor of the plaintiff. Emani had won. Cardi wasn't fined for millions. There was no dramatic breakdown, no handcuffs, no apology from the stand. But the judge did require a public acknowledgement of the incident, a formal written apology, compensatory damages for emotional distress, $6 million. Cardi's expression never broke. She stood, nodded, left the courtroom with her lawyers. But her silence spoke volumes. And Emani? She didn't smile, didn't cry. She exhaled, for the first time in what felt like months. She let go of the breath she'd been holding since the moment someone said, "You're just security." The news broke within minutes. Cardi B loses civil suit to former security guard. Six-Modeler's judgment for Emani Ellis in Beverly Hills assault case. Clinic footage exposes celebrity outburst. Power versus proof. When silence becomes evidence. The hashtags returned, stronger now. JustAGuard. Justice for Emani. Power is not infallible. You people is racist. But Emani didn't log on. She didn't want likes. She wanted peace. 2 weeks later, she stood at the back of a community center gym in Inglewood. The chairs were plastic. The lights buzzed. But every seat was filled. On stage was a small sign. Invisible no more. Protecting staff. Speaking truth. She wasn't the keynote speaker. She wasn't even scheduled to talk. But when the organizer asked if she wanted to say something, she did. She stepped to the mic, looked out across the room at dozens of black and brown women in uniforms. Security, janitorial, nursing, admin. All the jobs people ignore until they're not done. "I wasn't trying to be famous," she said. "I wasn't trying to take someone down. I was trying to do my job. And when I was disrespected for it, I spoke up. I've been called dramatic, a liar, an angry black woman. But today, I'm none of those things. I'm a woman who told the truth and got heard. If you've ever been ignored because of your badge, if you've ever been talked down to because you stand at the door instead of behind a desk, know this: you are not small, you are not invisible, and your truth is not too quiet to matter." She stepped back. The room didn't explode. It rose, in applause, in nods, in eyes that no longer looked down. Outside, her mother waited. "You did good, baby." "No, Mama, we did." And as they walked to the car, Emani looked up. Not at a spotlight, not at a phone camera, but at the sky, at a space big enough to hold voices like hers.